All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're at in this big, beautiful world we live in. My name is Cody, and you are on the Behind the Premium podcast, where we dive into those hard discussions that nobody wants to have, especially around the healthcare industry and the challenges are facing businesses today. And so I've assembled a great team of panelists to join me into today's discussion, which is on level funded versus self-funded healthcare plans. Which one is the best, and what is really the difference, I guess you could say. And so before we dive into today's topic, let's go around and meet our panelists. Joy Lynn joining us again. She didn't get scared off last time we had her, so we're happy to have her back. Joy Lynn, go ahead and just take a minute or two and tell all those that are tuning in all about you and your background.
All right. Well, I have been working in HR for over 20 years. I have a senior certification through SHRM in HR, and I have typically been in a smallish companies. And so I wear all hats, including everything to do with my company's benefits and open enrollments. And I kind of geek out on this stuff. I love it.
Nice. We love geeking out on this kind of stuff on this podcast. So again, if you guys are new, this is a safe space for anybody: CEOs, CFOs, HR directors, benefits managers, nurses, wellness coaches, you name it. We just want a safe place for all of us to let our hair down and have a deep conversation. So with that being said, somebody that I know loves to nerd out on this kind of stuff is Rhonda, the founder of Well Trio. How are you doing, Rhonda?
Doing great, Cody. Thanks. I'm very interested in seeing how you let your hair down.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, I'm working on it. It's a lifetime thing I'm working on.
So I am the founder of Well Trio. Prior to Well Trio, I've been doing Well Trio about 10 years. Prior to Well Trio as a surgical nurse. Always loved nutrition. So along the way, I got a master's in nutrition education. And Well Trio makes employee-sponsored plans doable, because we're behind the scenes supporting your employees to know how to use benefits, when to use benefits, what's the best benefit to use. We are intercepting high-cost claims before they happen. We're trying to negotiate cash prior to purchasing, and then we can negotiate after purchasing as well. But really where we focus is, I cringe to say it, but in wellness. Because wellness programs don't work, they have poor participation, they certainly don't fix the problem. But because we have such a high touch, where we're interacting with employees at least quarterly, and we're really trying to enrich the soil per se of the company, investing in the people to help them get better while we're reducing the cost of insurance. That's what we do.
Love it. And as always, Behind the Premium podcast is sponsored by Well Trio. So we thank you guys for your ongoing support. This is one of those podcasts, like I said, where we definitely want to push the envelope, have those hard discussions, because at the end of the day, being a business owner like myself, I've learned so much from you and from the rest of our panelists that we've had over the last few episodes, especially about the options that we have when it comes to healthcare. And we're going to be talking about two of those today: level funded and self-funded. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off, so to say, and talk about the elephant in the room. As an employer tells you that they are self-funded, what does that actually mean, and how is that different from level funded?
Well, I probably know how to answer that question. Might help to know, Joylyn, what is your company?
We're on a level funded plan.
Okay, so level funded. Let's do a little insurance 101. Every insurance plan, fully level or self-funded or captive or any number of iterations, has 4 parts. They have the TPA, who is the third-party administrator, pays the bills when they come in. They have the network, which is you buy into a network of providers. Like you might have a United Healthcare network or an Aetna network. They're the people that the doctors contract with to determine what rate's going to be paid. So TPA, third party administrator network, there's a PBM, which is the pharmacy benefit manager. There's always a separate medical and pharmacy. So you're always going to have a pharmacy benefit manager. And the third thing is some kind of risk management. In a fully funded plan, it's called a pool. In a level funded plan, it's a stop loss. Between fully funded and level funded is that fully funded, you are in a bigger pool than just your company, and level funded, you are just with your company. And then the self-funded, the magic self-funded has all those same parts, TPA, PBM, network, and stop loss, but you get to determine what the stop loss is, and you can mix and match companies. So in a level funded and fully funded plan, they're owned all by the same company. So it's the CVS owns the Aetna network, which owns the ER, which owns the TPA, which owns the Aetna network. Like they're all owned by the same thing, and there's not a lot of transparency. So self-funded gives you full transparency. You own the data, gives you full ability to plug in your own systems to make them work and earn your business and know what's being paid and where, and gives that it's owning versus renting versus leasing. We can go into analogy that later. So there's a little insurance 101.
No, I love it. I love it. So what would you say, Rhonda, is the biggest misconception that you encounter around these two types of plans?
Scary. Moving to self-funded is scary.
Scary, huh?
What I don't think people realize is since 2018, since Obamacare went into effect, insurance companies, no matter what kind of insurance they're providing, have insurance. They're buying insurance on the back end. So prior to Obamacare, an insurance company had a maximum lifetime benefit. They knew their risk. They'll pay $1 million maximum lifetime benefit. It's like car insurance. The car insurance company knows the risk.
Right.
Now there's unlimited risk. So with a fully funded plan, you're part of a pool. The pool is a group of people who kind of pick up the slack, but the insurance company doesn't tell you what the pool number is, but there's an insurance policy that picks up the leftovers. It's like having a hole in a bucket and you don't know where the hole is. And if water is coming in from your claims and anything spills out, the ocean will pick it up. That's the pool, but you get to pay for the right to put that in the ocean, and it's going to increase everything, and you don't really know where the hole is. It's tricky. That's fully funded.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask, Joylyn,
Yes.
since you got called out on what type of plan you're currently on, which was level funded, for those that don't remember from the first part of our podcast here, what made you guys go with the level funded versus a self-funded one?
Well, we had been on the fully funded plan before, and that was really hard because you had no idea how much you were spending on anything. And so each year renewal was like a crapshoot, right? It's like, unless you have heard through the grapevine how someone's doing, you had no idea what your usage rates were.
Right.
And since I've typically worked with small companies, there was no way I was going to get that information because we were too small. And so, I mean, I've worked for companies in the past that have had self-funded plans. There was a company that actually introduced me to HR. They're part of the reason why I'm in HR. It was in Southern California. Rhonda's actually familiar with this company, but they had a self-funded plan. But they also had, I don't know, I think it was around 900 employees. And anytime I've heard someone talk about self-funded, it's for large companies, right? and large companies that can absorb the risk, that have enough cash flow to handle everything. And so when we got the ability to go to a level funded plan, it felt like the natural progression because it gave us a little bit more visibility. We don't have as much visibility as a self-funded plan, I know that, but it still gave us more visibility to our what was going on with the usage. And there were things I liked about the particular insurance company that we were using because they had a lot of tools to try to help our employees be better. And there were some that was proactive, but there's a lot that kind of something with what Rhonda said, it still was more reactive, right? The insurance company couldn't know what claims were coming in till the claims came in. So at that point, it's been done. And so, my company that I work with now, we're a small manufacturing company in rural Utah. When I started working, with this company, we had 65 employees. Now we're in the mid 80s. So we're growing, but we're still small, right? So going with how I've always heard self-funded talk about, we were way too small to even consider it. And so the first time we considered it was last year when someone came and made a presentation. It wasn't the right year for us, but that's when we started thinking, this is something we want to work towards. But still in our head, we were like, we're just too small.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Total sense. I mean, being a business owner myself, I mean, I've never gone outside of the fully funded plans. One, I've never been big enough to have a plan to justify a level funded or even a self-funded one. But on the flip side of that too is the data thing. I'm learning so much that there are so many options that you can do if you have access to that data, and even if it's at the end of the year, you can still do so much. But if you can get it on a regular basis, monthly, daily type of thing, and be a little bit more proactive on it, you won't be one of those people that are seeing those high premium increases around this time of the year, which, hint, hint, if you guys want to see a good, scary open enrollment episode, check out our previous one. That was a lot of fun. We had Joy Lynn and Rhonda on that one as well. We talked about with a few other folks, all their scary stories that they had. But for me, it really boils down to education, right? Because for me, it was all about just picking up the phone, calling my broker and saying, I have this many employees, this is my budget, make something work, right? And she would come back and she would usually say, hey, you got option A, B, or C. I never even knew about level funded or self-funded for years after owning my first business. It wasn't until we got to a certain level where the broker was like, okay, great. Now let's start talking about these other plans. And even then I was like, great, what's my output? How much do I have to pay? How much do my employees have to pay? And is it even good insurance? Because I didn't want to throw money out the door, right?
Right.
So that kind of leads me to the next question I want to go to. And from my research that I was doing in preparation for today's podcast, I found that a statistic out there that was stating that 63% of U.S. workers are now in a self-funded plan, and level-funded adoption among smaller businesses have exploded from 13 to 42% in just 2 years. So maybe you guys can weigh in on this. I think Rhonda's probably got the answer to this, but what is driving this shift away from the fully funded plans?
Well, I can tell you, the reason why we moved to a level funded plan was so that we could get more data and be more educated. Cody, something that I would find interesting to know, which you probably don't have that, But so you know how many workers are on self-funded or level funded. I think what would be interesting to know is how many businesses.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Because if you have a company with, several thousand or even million employees, and that's a self-funded plan,
Yeah,
that would, because those large companies could really skew numbers one way or the other. So it'd be interesting to know how many businesses. But so for me, going to a level funded was so I could get some more control out of my plan. There's still a lot that I can't do, but it does give me more control. And then that's one of the reasons of wanting to go to a self-funded plan is not only more data, but like real control and really designing a plan that, I was talking to a coworker of mine who's run into a few problems using insurance, and it's just your typical problems, right? And I told her it's really hard trying to find a one size fits all because we're a small company. We only offer one plan. So now we're trying to offer a one size fits all. And we know how well one size fits all works, right? And it makes it so that now everybody's got coverage, but it doesn't work great for anybody. So, but so at least with the self-funded plan, it gives us more flexibility into really designing a plan. And I don't know, Rhonda, with a self-funded plan, do you, as a smaller employer, is it easier to give different options? Or, now I'm probably talking about things.
That's a great question. So you talked about control, and I think that's really a good way to look at the different kinds of plans. Fully funded is like elementary school. And you have to consider the education of the company, the size of the company, and the education of your employees. They have to know how to use the plan as well. So fully funded is we're going to do everything for you. You're going to go to a car rental place. You're going to get the car, and they're going to pay for all of the things. You're going to prepay gas, oil. They're going to do everything for you. A level funded plan, in my opinion, is a marketing technique to try to move people or try to help people see that self-funded is better, but they're not quite ready to take off the training wheels. So they still are in this, somebody else is in control, and it's maybe like high school. So somebody else is in control, but I have some autonomy. And your employees have to move along with you. They have to develop that maturity to move into a level plan as well. But you still have this vertical integration where everything's owned by one company. The hospital is owned by the provider, who's owned by the TPA, who's owned by the pharmacy. They're all connected, and they just can hide all kinds of costs in there. So they let you see the data, but you still don't have autonomy. Self-funded is like, okay, we've graduated from high school. My employees are ready to understand how to use the plan or have someone on board to help them know how to adult and use the plan. I have full transparency, and I am responsible. I'm buying the vehicle. And then you put in place what you are willing to have your risk be, which is the stop loss. That you don't want your risk to be over $40,000, then you put a $40,000 stop loss in. And if any one employee hits that number, then daddy comes and pays the bill, which is the stop loss insurance. So there's always a level of risk protection in any plan. And with a self-funded plan, you get to pick where that level is. And it used to be, even 5 years ago, you need a company 200 plus to think about self-funding. And then they kind of got this hybrid level funding, which I just still think is a marketing gig. That's why I think it's increased, Cody, because people are scared of self-funded, but want this hybrid. So we move from fully funded to self-funded. We have a lot more control. It just takes more management on the back end. And so if you don't know how to do that, you need somebody like Welltrio or a concierge on board who can teach your employees how to adult and own the car.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Uh, Joylyn, how many are in your HR team, if you don't mind me asking?
So there's me, and then I have a part-time helper now. She started this past summer. So for most of my time here at the company, it's just been me.
And I think that's pretty consistent across the board for businesses that are in your size range, I would say. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rhonda, but from my understanding, this data, if you do have access to the data, it does take time to look at this data on a weekly basis. And I want to say it's probably like 3 to 5 hours per week. And
So
would you say that's a good guesstimate or
a
of
great
time
question.
spent?
You can spend as much time as you want. In my experience, HR doesn't want to spend any time in the details of the healthcare of their employees, which is why it's super cool to bring someone on who understands healthcare and is happy to get into the details. I easily look at claims for 3 to 4 hours a week, but I love them. I geek out on them.
I told you we got a geek over here that loves this kind of stuff.
Well, Cody, it's not necessarily, so there's a time factor. And yes, like Rhonda said, HR doesn't want to do it, but HR doesn't want to do it because there's a lot of potential liability for HR to know the health concerns of its employees, right? So if I have an employee that is a high user of health insurance, I don't know, they got a chronic condition, they're taking expensive medication or whatever, and say I discipline that employee for some reason, it could be perceived that we're trying to get the employee out of the company because we don't want to pay for them. Right. And so there's a lot of problems with knowing your employee's health situation. And so it's not necessarily that, I don't want to be bothered with it. There's a liability, and we start getting into a whole other range of potential discriminatory issues if I know the ins and outs of all my employees' health situations.
Yeah, no, that you brought up a really good point there. I think I don't know the fees offhand, but I do know that I think HIPAA's what, $2,500, $3,000 a day per HIPAA violation. There's like $50,000 per incident and criminal charges. I mean, this is serious stuff. I mean, what you bring up is a great thing. So yeah, I think you just made the case for a lot of people to pick up Trio, or at least a third party to kind of act as that buffer and add that compliance there and avoid that landmine. So yeah, that's definitely a great feedback there. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Rhonda, but I think that even level funded people think that they're still protected under the fully funded thing, and that this compliance issue doesn't really pertain to them. But I think that's a big misconception along people that I've talked to and that I've researched. Is that correct?
So yes, what employers may not know, and the conflict of interest runs deep, is that the employer is the fiduciary of the plan. So they're responsible to make sure that it is being used wisely and in the best interest of all of those dollars that are being put in on the employee's behalf. And they don't want to look at the data, and nor really should they, but they are responsible legally. They're the fiduciary of the plan. So that's a whole legal thing. I did want to mention companies as small as 3 employees are self-funding.
Wow.
Because it's just become so ridiculous. If you can imagine, you have a family who's on the ACA, small employer, 3 employees, themselves, their wife, and a partner. So they're all on the ACA plan. The family's now paying $3,000 a month in a decent plan. So $3,600 a year. Sorry, $36,000 a year to actually more than that. Anyway, they get to pay that for the privilege of using their insurance, and they have to buy the first $10,000 worth of insurance before insurance pays $1. So they're in it, and for their family, that would go up to 20. So they're in it $50,000 before insurance pays $1. That's like telling the power company, look, you turn my power on, and if I use it, I'll pay the first $10,000 of my power. And then if I don't use it, I don't get any money back, and the cost to turn it on is going to be $30,000. And if I do use it, they're going to increase the cost to turn it on next year. That's just so ridiculous. So yeah, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with my employees' health if I was working in the HR. The liability is so detrimental to everybody involved.
Well, and then to build on your analogy, Rhonda, not only, going to the power company, okay, it's $30,000 if I decide to use it, but now I also don't know what it's going to cost me to use it until after the fact, right? It's very hard to know, for employees to be wise stewards of healthcare, for employers when, my husband had some surgery last year, and we're waiting on bated breath to know if we're going to be paying like $600 or, $5,000. You don't know. And it's this crazy, you're consuming something before you know what the costs are. So you have that complexity on top of it.
Yeah.
And then there's this, sorry, Cody, there's something that happens in the recovery rooms of hospitals. That's where my experience is, where the doctor wants to send you home with an ice machine or with crutches or with, all of these different things where you have a temporary block and it's going to wear off in 6 hours, but they want you to leave now. So you're going to need crutches. It's okay. Insurance pays for it. Like insurance is some pixie dust you sprinkle on something. You need this $500 ice machine because it's too hard to put ice in a bag and stick it on your knee. Oh, but so okay, because insurance will pay for it. We're paying for the insurance, and there's no insurance company going hungry right now. They have that vertical integration. I mean, talk about conflict of interest. When the power company owns the switch and the all of the components, it's just so slimy. It's just so slimy, the whole insurance industry.
So can I ask a question, Rhonda? So you said up until like 5-ish years ago, really you couldn't self-fund until you were larger, 200 employees or more, which explains why I had that in my head. But is the difference why it's making more and more sense for small companies to self-fund just because the costs of insurance have gotten so out of control? Or are there other elements that have changed that now allow it to make more sense for small companies?
I think both. I think that we are becoming more educated post Affordable Care Act. That the cost of insurance is so astronomical and increases so unpredictably that you can't plan for it, and then you can't mitigate the risk for it. So the companies have to look at another option. Self-funded seems scary because there is some unpredictability in the week-to-week claims. With self-funded, you are paid. You get a bill every week to pay the claims that came in and were processed through that third-party administrator, the TPA. So there's some volatility in what the claims might be. They might be $3,000 one week and $30,000 the next, and you don't know. So you have to have some solvency. all companies do, so that needs to be something you consider. Another thing you really need to be concerned about when you're looking at self-funding is that there's what's called a run-out period. So you're paying claims from January 1 to December 31st, but those claims, you can continue to get claims into March and April of the next year from November and December the prior year, and you have to pay those. So if self-funded didn't work well for you and you decided to move back to a level funded or a fully funded plan where you don't own the car and you're not responsible for the repairs, you might still get a bill. And like, whoa, where did this come from? I'm paying my regular premium. So you have to know that. There's another thing I'm watching brokers do, which is a little concerning to me, and that's really pitching things like captives. If you're part of a union, I mean, there's some good reasons to be in a captive. A captive is like a self-funded plan, but you're part of a pool. So there's two risk mitigators. There's a stop loss and then a pool that buys down the stop loss. The pool is part of a bigger group, like that you have something in common. But you have to buy into captives. You have to pay your dues, per se, to fund the pool. And if you decide it's not good or you want to move into a self-funded plan or something else, you don't get that money back. So it's an investment that you might not get back if you want to move. So I think if you are going to bite the bullet and you're going to make your employees grow up and move from a rental to own, don't do this in between lease thing. Like, just if it's disruptive anyway, let's just do it all at once. But if you don't have the right support to educate the employees, which is huge, on how to be a grown-up and manage your own health, it's a disaster. So I understand the concerns deeply.
Yeah.
You're not prepared.
Well, I know when when the self-funded plan was presented to me last year, we talked about a tradition. I don't know what the right word is, but a self-funded plan. And at that time, my broker friend that I was talking to, he's not my current broker, but trying to get my business. He had someone with him that they had just started out this cash pay self-funded plan, right? And it was brand new, so they were still like test driving it. Anyway, they presented that plan to me this year, and it sounds amazing and it sounds awesome, but it also sounded really, really scary. And I was like, how on earth are my employees going to do this? Because right now they can barely look up their HSA account. So how are they supposed to do all this? So, he was telling me, and this is before I knew about Well Trio, but he was telling me, well, you'll have a concierge service, but I was like, how is this going to work? And so for me, that's been one of because my company, we're solvent. We've got cash. I'm not too worried about the ins and outs of, getting bills and stuff. And I understand the idea of reinsurance. But one of the things that's been super scary to me is, how do I help my employees? Because frankly, I'm shocked with the things I have to help them with as is. And so I was just trying to figure out, how is this going to work? And, so last week I found out about Well Trio, and, I started seeing the vision of how it could work, still haven't seen it in action, but that for me is one of the really scary things.
That makes a lot of sense. The things you have to handhold people on is not lost on me.
So let me put it this way. You bring up a good thing, Joylyn. Fear of the unknown, right? We know that in most cases, owning is better than renting, and it is a scary leap. I remember when I bought my first house, going from rent and jumping up almost double to get into a home, it was a scary thing. But once we got in there, it was like, why didn't we do this sooner, right? The tax breaks, the ability to control the cost of it. I didn't have a landlord that was going to tell me 1 month later that my rent just went up just because they could get somebody in there that's willing to pay for it, right? And I like that analogy of rent versus own because it totally fits the narrative of what healthcare insurance is all about. But also having a good real estate agent or having a good accountant that can help you walk through the scenario is key. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rhonda, but you guys at Trio, for those that are looking to rip those training wheels off of their level funded or even their fully funded plans and move on to a self-funded one, you guys will literally walk them through how to set it up, because from my understanding, that is a very, very tricky thing to navigate. And if you don't do it right, you kind of set yourself up for failure at the end of the year, correct?
Yeah, and you don't want frustrated employees. They're your bread and butter. So yes, we do open enrollment education one-on-one with every employee. And then at that appointment, schedule our next appointment, and we meet at least quarterly with every employee. So they may not have a question, but at that moment, but they'll think of them and they'll know, oh, that appointment's coming up, and they'll be able to get it answered. And if they something more urgent, they know how to get in touch with us. And we don't have a call center. They have a dedicated coach. They have a dedicated nurse. So we are actively not only engaging with them quarterly, but often more if we see a behavior that we want to kind of tweak or question or redirect. Those are all things we do, and teach people how to use the plan. Get them excited about it. This is what you can do. When you move into a cash plan, Joylyn, it's actually really exciting for the employees because the copays, the deductibles, and the coinsurance go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have this, then it becomes like a really strong tool for prevention, because they're not saying, oh, I'm concerned about this cough, but I don't want to pay $150 or whatever to go to the urgent care, so I'm not going to go, and they put it off until it becomes a really big problem. So we really want to incentivize preventative care. That's cheap in the long run. So a cash plan can be really exciting. But I totally agree. If you don't have you have to be in the weeds and know the plan intimately to be able to educate your employees on how to use it appropriately under every scenario and circumstance that might pop up. And there's always such strange circumstances that pop up.
Yep. And,
So
and just speaking from personal experience, a lot of times, while I don't want to know all my employees' health issues, right? There are times I find out, that somebody went in for an MRI last week and they got it at the hospital, where I'm like, oh, if I would have known, I could have directed you somewhere else, right? And so, one of the things that's hard, where I think Trio really comes in, is the employees oftentimes don't know what questions to ask. Mm-hmm. And they're just going off, what their doctor told them, right? Yeah. It's different, but it's a similar thing. Where I'm located, we're rural. And so most of the doctors in our community are in network. But as soon as we leave our rural valley and either go up to Salt Lake or down to Utah County, then now networks become very, very important. And so up here, the doctor up here will say, you need to see a specialist, and they'll give a recommendation for a specialist that is part of, their network here, but is out of network once we get into one of the larger valleys. But my employees want to go to the doctor that was recommended because, this is who my doctor recommended. My doctor recommended them because they're the best, not because, well, they're the person I know and they're my friend, right? But there's this assumption. And so, it's really hard because health insurance is just scary. It's scary to a lot of people. People don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know which questions to ask. And so now I need you to understand insurance.
Yeah.
That's just a whole other level.
All right, Rhonda, jump in. I know you're itching to answer this one.
I don't know. I agree with everything you've said. I think we would be hard pressed to find 10 people randomly out of any company in the US who could tell you what a deductible is, what a copay is, what a coinsurance is, what max out of pocket is, what a premium is. Certainly they wouldn't know TPA, PBM, none of those things. So they just don't know what it is. I found several years ago, I connected with a physician from Colombia, super interested in what I was doing, so came and spent several weeks trying to unpack so that they could bring this home to Colombia to their people, and he could offer the services to his patients. It took me a good 4 or 5 days for him to understand how the US insurance system worked. He just had no idea, like, because you pay cash when you go to Colombia. You don't get in unless you pay. And that's not how we do it here. And we don't know what it's going to cost. And it is scary.
Yeah, it is.
It
is definitely scary.
To do it without an advocate like Weltrio just seems ludicrous. Like, how can you, like that, how could you not have an accountant in your company or a lawyer when there's a lawsuit? And yet we don't have a medical provider and we're responsible for our employees' healthcare. Like, it's just amazing to me.
So that's a great point to kind of bring up. There are going to be tons of businesses that are switching from fully level funded to self-funded this year, that may or may not have done it with a professional. Maybe they did have a professional, but how long, from your experience, Rhonda, does it usually take for a business that has just started on self-funded to realize that they've made a mistake in their plan, and that's going to be very costly for them if they're not careful? Typically, what's that range, and what should they be looking for?
So moving from a fully or level funded to a self-funded, how long before they know they've made a mistake?
Yeah, like not setting it up properly.
Like in plan design.
Yeah, in plan design, being able to at the end of the day, let's be honest, being a business owner, if I can put more money on my bottom line, I'm going to go with whatever plan makes sense to me, right? So in this scenario, if these three different things, specifically self-funded, is going to be probably the most beneficial for me on the bottom line, it gives me more money and it gives my employees potentially better benefits, and I'm not wasting benefits on spend there. But on the flip side of that, it does take responsibility. I get that. Data, analyzing that data, recognizing that data. But if I don't proactively do anything with it, or if I am still reactive on it, how long until, when it comes down to that design of understanding that, where I can see that I messed up and I should have hired an expert to help me set it up, or my broker just totally screwed me, that's going to cost me hundreds, if not millions of dollars. Okay,
good question. Let's unpack this a little bit. Your broker is not in the business of screwing you. We really like brokers. We need them. And I am not a broker. So I say that without any reservation. Any broker with a third-party administrator is going to be helping you set up the plan. They may very well give you an ABC of a self-funded plan, and it will probably work. Is it going to be maximized or really targeting your specific population? No. And you're going to find out pretty soon that there are people who are frustrated and you haven't addressed all of your employees' pain points. So as I implemented a self-funded plan in year 3 of our pilot company that we did for 10 years, there were things that came up and I was very intricately involved in building the plan, but you learn along the way. And there were things that came up, and I kept notes. Okay, in 2020, I had 12 things I wanted to adjust. We're gonna remove the deductible on in-office procedures. We're gonna waive the deductible or reduce the copay on complex imaging, because people would not get an ultrasound or a CT because they'd have to pay the first 1,000, where then we're letting things go that end up in surgery later. So I'm like, okay, co-insurance kicks in day one for complex imaging. So these are little things that we did and adjusted as we went to address all the pain points. And then because every single dollar that you save, 100% of that dollar stays in your bank account. It's unlike any other like expense or sales thing. Your reserves start to build. So when I left that group for a myriad of reasons that happened, they had a $500 deductible, a $2,000 max out of pocket, and they had no copays on primary care. They had many waived deductible on in-office procedures, and no deductible on complex imaging. And we had massage, 12 massage a year. We had a fertility benefit. We were the things we were able to add because we had this surplus of cash. And then we continue to collect the same premium, but we don't need it. So you don't want to drop your premium too much, because you don't want to drop premiums for your employees. They just kind of think things go up, inflation happens, but you put less in. You can put less into your bucket. There's just so many things you could do. So having someone on your team who's not giving you an ABC for a self-funded plan, but digging in, not looking at the 5-page summary of benefits, but looking at the 120-page document to say, how is this specific thing going to be covered? You want someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I agree with you. We love brokers. This has to be a team effort from HR, CEOs, HR, your broker, TPA, what'd you call it? PBM. It's got to be across the board. What I just said with brokers is where business owners puts the blame majority of the time, right? And it sucks being in that position, but it's the harsh reality. Like when it comes down to it, they're not going to say, hey, no, I screwed up selecting this plan. It's like, no, my broker is going to be the one, right? So anything we can do to help out, brokers. I love working with brokers that are very innovative and aren't there for the commission side of it. Because if I know that they're there for me and my employees, they've got my business, right? The ones that I feel like they're just there to sell me option A, B, or C, and I know how much they're making the commission off of the back end, it does make it a little bit of a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But when we can all work together, it's a win-win-win-win situation for everybody involved. So, but yes, great. I just wanted to emphasize that. I do believe in brokers. They are great, but this is a team effort, right? So great point on that. We are almost at the top of the hour, and we have only gotten through like 3 questions. This has been an amazing discussion. I love it. I want to be respectful of your time. So probably what we'll do is we will make a level funded versus self-funded part 2. And we'll kind of jump into that. But I did want to ask you guys, since we've been kind of talking about the move from level funded to self-funded, I know Joylyn, you've been asking a lot of great questions. And I'm going to ask one myself to Rhonda, and feel free to jump in and piggyback off of this as well. But Rhonda, like for me, when I hear that moving to self-funded could save upwards of like 20 to 30%, that's a pretty big hike, right? And especially where I've heard you talk about today on the podcast, you've been talking about, $30,000 claim here, maybe a $90,000 the next month. I mean, it's so unpredictable. How can you actually achieve that type of savings where you have the real unknown? And I get that there's a stop loss insurance that'll pay, but they don't pay out until you hit, I don't know what the number is, but like $1 million, let's just say. What happens to all of that below that stop loss, and how can you guarantee those type of savings?
Good question. So, and a small group, there's going to be some unpredictability in claims, but you have bumper cars. I mean, there are bumpers on two very specific ways. There's a stop loss on an individual, so you can determine with a self-funded plan, how much do I want to have my risk be? So just like if you are going to the market and buying a plan, you know what your deductible is, and you know worst case scenario your maximum out of pocket. And the government's capped it. This year it can't be more than like 10,200 or something like that. That's your worst case scenario. You have that with a self-funded plan. You have the predicted amount, and then they usually do 100 and additional 25%, which is your maximum. That's your aggregate. So if one individual, say your stop loss is at 40,000, if one individual hits 40,000, stop loss pays actually usually before you even pay. It's very quick depending on the vendor. So you're not sitting there holding that $30,000 bill, they pay. And then you have an aggregate on the whole. So if you have a group and everyone had a really crappy year, they're going to have a maximum that if the maximum might be $1 million, the company would pay everything over $1 million. And that's going to all depend on group size. If you're a group of 3, those are not going to be your stop. You might have a $10,000 stop loss and a $40,000 aggregate. So it just depends on your company size. But really, because of the Affordable Care Act, self-funding, the only big difference between self-funded and fully funded is that unpredictability week to week, and who owns the different pieces. In a fully funded, you are owned by the network you choose. If you have Aetna, you're going to have a CVS PBM, and you're going to have the Aetna network. It's all, and they're hiding so many costs and expenses in there that you can't flesh out. In a self-funded plan, you get to determine, I'm going to have this pharmacy benefit manager, maybe a common Mark Cuban, at Amazon, like they charge you not what they want to charge or what they've negotiated with the pharmaceutical company, but just a flat fee plus cost, and they will show you the invoice. That's the kind of PBM I want to put you with, where I can see the invoice and they're just charging me like $5 to fill it. I will want a TPA that is transparent, that will show me every line item, not just the top 10. I want to know the details, and you can pick who you want. If you're in a fully funded, they aren't going to give you any of that information because you're part of a pool, and they don't want you to know that you might be paying for other people's insurance because you're a pretty decent group. And then with the network, we buy a network. We pay a fee to be part of a network. But if you go to a cash plan, you don't have to buy the network. You just can go to whoever, they can go to whatever they want. And the final piece is the stop loss, and you have to pay the stop loss insurance. You're paying for that catastrophic plan. Mm-hmm. It's a fraction of the premium. And then if you have a bad year and your premium increases, it's an increase of the stop loss, not an increase of the whole. And you can build your plan, have your network, have your PBM, your TPA, and it can be a bad year and you want to shop, like, switch cell phone companies. You can shop stop loss every single year. There's thousands of them, and never disrupt your plan again. And, play each other off, get 6% off or 5% off. And you doesn't matter who's, because they're in the background. So there's just a lot of control with the stop loss. And as far as ability,
oh, sorry, real quick. And you can make changes throughout the year as well, right?
If you own your own plan, you have to give your employees 90 days notice. but I have often made mid-year changes because something comes up like, whoa, didn't expect that. We're going to make a change so that we can stop the bleeding. Okay, we're going to make a change. It goes out to the employees and then it's implemented.
That makes sense.
A lot of control.
That makes sense. Sorry to interrupt. You're mid thought, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
I don't know if I addressed the unpredictability. You have bumpers. There's just like the insurance company is buying bumpers for you. They don't want to have an unpredictable cost either. You always know what your worst case scenario is going to be, and you can fund for it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Joylyn, anything you want to add? If not, I have a specific question for you.
No, I have still a ton of questions, so we definitely need part 2.
Well, throw out one of your last questions to Rhonda. We'll save the rest for the next episode. How about that?
Well, so I don't know which one to ask, but you made a mention of the premiums going up. My company, we don't really charge premiums.
Mhm.
And so how would that, so if the employees aren't paying premiums, right? And then if we go, say, to a cash pay plan, kind of where's that motivation for them to be wise?
That's a really good question. A smart question, because there are people who are like, I met my deductible and like shoulder replacement for you, knee replacement for you. What else can I give them?
Right.
I understand that. So there you are paying a premium, but what it sounds like is you are not charging your employees for their health care.
Right. There's a few tweaks to it, but overall, the employees do not pay any premium.
Even for their dependents?
Nope, they don't pay.
We got to go work for Miro.
Myro.
Sounds like it. Do you guys offer free soda and lunches on Fridays?
Free
Just so
soda.
I'm there.
Today we had a lunch, smoked meats that different people smoked.
Oh, I'm there. I'm just kidding.
But it's a Pepsi soda fountain, so it's gross.
Do you have an HSA?
We do have an HSA.
You contribute to it for them?
It's a match. So when I started, they were not required to put anything in their HSA, and we just put flat money in it. And a lot of people didn't even realize the benefit of it. And so then we switched it to, we'll put in a match, and it's a very generous match. For every dollar they put in, we put in $1.75.
Oh.
But now people are like, this is great. I love my HSA. This is such a great benefit. But like I said, we won't put anything into it unless they put something into it.
Okay.
So see, you really do want to come work for me.
Well, it sounds like you have good benefits. So if I were to work with a company like yours, Joylyn, I would actually come in and say, we're going to disrupt the system a little bit. We're either going to charge your employees a premium, say $150, or we're going to only match the HSA if they participate with WellTrue, because cash drives participation.
Right.
If it doesn't hurt, they're not going to participate, and participation is how we drive costs down. So we would do something like, okay, your employees now need to pay $150 for their insurance, but if they work with WellTrue on a quarterly basis, they can earn $150 towards their premium every month. So that's a no net increase for them. Mm-hmm. And then you have participation, so you're really helping them learn how to drive. Now, I don't know much about the cash plan that's been presented to you, but I am familiar with the cash plan that incentivizes the employee. It's kind of exciting. I'm really doing some homework on it, but they give the employee a debit Visa card. It's got Visa on it. They teach the employee when they go in to get care, say, I'm paying cash, but they give them an app. and this is where the magic happens. The app tells them in their geographic location what's the average cash price. And then it might list on the graph 10 providers that do that service. And it will tell you the cash price for each provider, which is public information.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell you the average. And they say, let's say you're going to go get a colonoscopy and the average is $2,000 cash price. Then you pick your provider. You can go to one that's for less or more. And if it's more, you'll pay the difference. And if it's less, they'll split the difference with you. The employee's now making some money by shopping their healthcare. I found a colonoscopy for $1,500 and I made $250. So still no copay, no deductible, no networks, no co-insurance, and they're motivated to save some money.
Okay.
And who wants to do multiple colonoscopies just for fun in a year anyway?
No.
Right? So that it does. I don't know what the cash plan that has been presented to you, but that is how another cash plan I'm familiar with works.
Okay.
And there's a heavy lift educating the employees.
Yeah.
That's where WellTrio comes in to help.
For sure. I've learned so much from Rhonda just on these conversations. It helped me out today. I'll save that story for next time. She definitely saved me $150 today. So I appreciate her. And education is definitely, in my opinion, just like cash, right? Had I not known that, I would have been down the drain an extra $150. But anyways, I wanted to thank you two ladies for joining. We appreciate your guys' expertise and knowledge in this area. I do want to ask one last question, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to shill yourself on the way out. What innovation or trend do you think that the healthcare is not talking about that we need to talk about that will reshape this industry?
Okay.
For me, I will go first. I'll let you ladies think. For me, I think we need to put more emphasis on mental health. I think that burnout is a real thing. I think that too many of us, especially in the corporate world, experience that, and we don't even know that we're experiencing it. And we definitely look to jump ship because we do get burnt out. We think we need a change of scenery, a different venue, but in reality, it is that we are just burnt out. So mental health, anything we can do to encourage work-life balance, things like that, I would love to see, especially having those, manager bosses type of texts that come after 6 o'clock at night, with the fear of not replying immediately, will go against your job security, I guess you could say. That kind of stuff needs to stop, and we need to focus on mental health as part of this whole getting healthier, happier employees.
That is so true.
Yes.
That's an excellent point.
How about anybody else? I gave you like 30-second head start.
But I was listening. Did you have something, Rhonda?
It's along the lines of mental health, but taking responsibility for your own healthcare.
Yeah.
Learning how to be your own healthcare advocate. Learning that you can say to the doctor, "I'm not coming in for a second procedure. We're going to do both, mole biopsies today," and just knowing that you can advocate for yourself. There's so much we can do for root cause, and our society, our culture has taught us that it's not our responsibility, it's somebody else's. But that's not true. It is your responsibility for your health.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was kind of thinking along the lines of the same way, but the way our healthcare system has evolved, or maybe healthcare insurance, is that, it's really hard for employees to be good consumers. And because even though there are like apps out there, most insurance plans have a website where you can go and see the average cost of doctors. But with all the convoluted networks, all these different things, the cost that you see if you're trying to work through your insurance is almost non-existent. And so it makes it really hard for people to be good consumers and to understand what they can and can't ask. And then I'd also like to see us being more, and I think the healthcare fits into it, understanding weight. There's a lot of different things, but really be much more into preventative cures or preventative lifestyles cures, or however you want to state that. There's too many that we don't want to deal with it until it becomes the problem.
Yes.
Joylyn, you just gave me 2 episode titles that I'm going to be working off of. Thank you. I appreciate
so
it.
welcome.
I love it. I love it. Okay, ladies, if you guys want to, we'll start with Joylyn. If you want to just take 30 seconds, just tell everybody about, again, who you are and what company you're representing, that would be great.
Wonderful. I'm Joylyn Jepson with Myro Industries. We're a small manufacturing company. We make rooftop pipe supports that go on commercial and industrial buildings. We've been around for over 40, 50 years. And we are in Heber City, Utah. It's beautiful here, but everybody's already moving here, so don't move here too.
That's probably the best advice we've heard all day. I'm kidding. All right, Rhonda, it's off to you.
My name's Rhonda Nurnberg. I'm with Well Trio. Emails rhonda@welltrio.com. Go to welltrio.com and click on free assessment. We can do a free assessment for any company, any size. It's no cost, and we can tell you what we think we can save your company.
Awesome. Thank you again, ladies. We appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that's tuning in live and recorded. We appreciate you guys. We are definitely growing. A lot of views on our videos over the last few episodes. So we appreciate the ongoing support. And if you guys happen to have any topics that you guys want to learn about, that's why we're here. We're here to have those hard discussions and let our hair down so that we can talk the truths and have full transparency about what is actually going on in this broken healthcare system so that you guys can get the best advantages when it comes to your health and while keeping costs pretty low. So with that being said, tune in every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Mountain Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. Otherwise, we will catch you guys on the next episode of Behind the Premium. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. We'll catch you later.
Bye.
Yeah.